Next up, editorial board member Steve Moore joins us via Skype from Washington to talk about a pretty remarkable assault on a state legislative organization called ALEC. Steve, welcome.
Hi, Mary.
Now, before we start, Steve, just a matter of journalism. Can you just tell us real briefly any personal affiliations you have with this American Legislative Exchange Council?
Well, I've known of ALEC for years, Mary, and for about the last 4 or 5 years, I've done a study for ALEC, co-authored with Art Laffer, who writes quite a bit for our paper, on ranking the states on their economic policies, tax policies, labor policies, regulations, and so on.
Okay, great. Great to get that out of the way. Now, tell us, for those viewers out there who don't know what it is, what is ALEC and how long has it been around?
Well, ALEC's been around for about 25 years, Mary, and what they are is a organization of state legislators. There are about 2,000 to 2,500 members of the organization, legislators from all the 50 states. And what ALEC does is hold conferences that helps them introduce model legislation on everything from cutting taxes to reforming the tax system to pension reform to regulatory relief. So they cover a whole panoply of mostly economic issues.
Well, that sounds pretty run-of-the-mill to me, Steve, but something called the Color of Change has targeted this organization in recent weeks. Why?
Right. Well, what happened was that ALEC has taken on a huge new prominence in the last couple of years because Republicans have won so many seats, and so now ALEC has more members than ever. Their influence has been magnified, and they're promoting these free market ideas that left-wing groups like Color of Change and the Occupy Wall Street movement and some of these other Soros-funded organizations don't like. And what they did was they mounted this campaign calling ALEC a racist organization, Mary, because they endorsed policies such as the what you were just talking about, the stand your ground laws, and then also the voter ID laws that say that when you vote, you have to show a photograph, and that's something that the left-wing groups say is racist.
Now, I want to connect the dots a little bit. I'm talking with Steve Moore, editorial board member in Washington. Now, the Color of Change's co-founder is Van Jones, a former Obama administration official who's heading this group that's attacking ALEC. How do these issues, voter ID or stand your ground laws, how does that, if at all, help the administration with President Obama's re-election campaign?
Well, I think the worry here, Mary, is that a lot of these organizations believe that ALEC has taken on so much prominence and they're having such a positive effect, in my opinion, on issues like pension reform, on issues like cutting taxes and cutting back on government spending. They were looking for some way of going after these organizations. What they've done, by the way, Mary, is they've targeted the corporate members who provide financial support for ALEC. So companies like Coca-Cola, Mars, Kraft Food, and many others have been targeted by these organizations, saying if you don't withdraw from ALEC, we're going to start calling you racist. We're going to stop getting Black Americans and other minorities from buying your products. And a lot of these organizations, Mary, have folded. They've basically said, okay, we're not going to contribute anymore to ALEC. That's really disappointing to see, because if these groups like ALEC lose their corporate support, it means the left-wing groups are going to get all the money and they're going to have much more influence.
Well, it's great to see big companies standing up for principles that they believe in, Steve. Now, let's talk a little bit about the money here. You said that ALEC is growing in clout because it's gotten more members. But is this a big money organization like some of the groups that are funded by Soros and others? Or is ALEC larger, or smaller, or on a different scale altogether?
Well, one thing about ALEC that's very different from other organizations that are involved in state legislatures, for example, there's a liberal group called National Conference of State Legislators. It does the same thing ALEC does, but it has a much more liberal orientation. Here's the interesting thing about that, Mary. National Council of State Legislatures gets most of its money from state governments, from taxpayers, whereas ALEC takes almost no taxpayer money. They get their support from private foundations and private corporations. And this is a smear campaign, Mary, make no doubt about it. I don't really believe this is about the opposition to voter ID laws. I think what this is really about is the unions and other left-wing organizations are so concerned about how successful ALEC has been in getting legislation passed on economic issues. They're calling ALEC a racist organization, so the companies will withdraw, they'll lose their financial support, and they won't be able to support free market ideas.